Psalm 51. This psalm maps out a journey from being overwhelmed by guilt and sin to restoration and restored vision, from inward self-focus to outward focus on others and upward focus on the God who cleanses and restores those with a broken and crushed heart. This journey has 3 parts: cleanse me, restore us. But first, a little bit of background. It happened late one afternoon when David arose from his couch and was walking on the roof of the king's house, that he saw from the roof a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. And David sent and inquired about the woman. And one said, "Is not this Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" So David sent messengers and took her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. David saw, and he took. And in that moment, the moment of seeing and taking, everything began to unravel. David begins a downward spiral of lies and manipulation until he ends up having Uriah killed and takes Bathsheba as a wife. Then God sends Nathan the prophet. "You are the man. Why have you despised the word of the Lord by doing evil in his sight? You have struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword and have taken his wife to be your wife." David's response: "I have sinned against the Lord." Or as he says in Psalm 51, "Against you alone I have sinned, and I have done what is evil in your eyes." David is overwhelmed, desperate. "Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin, because I am continually aware of my transgressions and my sin is constantly in front of me." From verses 3 to 11, David is surrounded by his sin. It is everywhere, covering him like a dark cloud. My transgressions, my iniquity, my sin, my transgressions, my sin. I have sinned. I have done what is evil. I was born in iniquity, in guilt, my sins, my iniquities. Surrounded by all this sin, David pleads that it will all be wiped away. Wipe away my transgressions. Wash me, cleanse me, purify me so that I will be clean. Wash me, wipe away all my iniquities. Interestingly, David seems to arrange this desperate plea with a very intentional design. He begins and ends with the word maheh, wipe away. Between these, he uses the matching words kabaseni and techabaseni, which both mean wash me. Between these, he matches the words umehatati tahareni with tahateni ve'ethar, cleanse me from my sin, and purify me so that I will be clean, the same 2 words twice. Finally, between these, he seems to mirror the word edah from the verb yada, meaning to know or to be aware, with the matching word todi'eni, you make me know, from the same root. See, in Hebrew poetry, words were often arranged into patterns and structures to add layers of meaning, to shape and reflect a psalm's message. The pattern created here is called a chiasm, and it has this ABCD, E, DCBA pattern, where the first half is mirrored in reversed order in the second half. And this pattern tells us at least 2 important things. The first is that it tells us where the climax is. Chiastic patterns often point to a key central section, like the tip of a pyramid. Against you alone I have sinned, and I have done what is evil in your eyes, such that you are in the right when you speak. You are faultless when you judge. This is the key moment. I have sinned. You are in the right. At the tip of the pyramid, David takes full responsibility. No more hiding, no more excuses, No more lies. David surrenders and submits completely to God's truth, God's perfect, righteous judgment. The second thing this pattern does with its matching sections is to create a sense of completion, as if David is trying to show how perfect, how complete his confession is. He has acknowledged his sin. He has asked for cleansing. He has surrendered and submitted to God's perfect judgment. And the symmetry creates a satisfying closure as the end matches the beginning. Wipe away my transgressions. Wipe away all my iniquities. And everything in between matches. A complete confession. And this sense of completion becomes even clearer as we continue in the psalm. If you think of the whole psalm as like a painting, we've seen that this first cleanse me section is covered in sin words. The stain of sin is smeared over almost every single verse of David's confession. But from verse 12, nothing. For the rest of the psalm, not a single word appears referring to David's personal sin. From the confession's closing words, wipe away all my iniquities, it's as if they really have been wiped away, and the rest of the canvas is whiter than snow. But there's more. Another way we see that David's confession was a complete, even perfect confession, is what happens in verse 12 to 14. Create a clean heart for me, God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me away from before you, and do not take your Holy Spirit away from me. Restore to me the gladness that results from your salvation, and would you please support me with a willing spirit. When we are overwhelmed by our sin, we lose sight of the good and beautiful path with God. All we can see is ourselves in the darkness under the heavy cloud of sin. And all we can pray is, cleanse me. But with true confession, the cloud lifts and our vision of the good and beautiful path is restored. And that leads to a new prayer. Restore me. Here, David no longer pleads, wipe away, wash me, cleanse me. Instead, create, renew, restore a clean heart, a steadfast spirit, your Holy Spirit, a willing spirit, and the gladness that results from your salvation. This is a moment of reorientation to the good, to the path of restoration with God. And interestingly, verse 12 is also the exact midpoint in the psalm, with precisely 20 lines before and 20 lines after, as if to say that this moment of reorientation to the good is the turning point in the journey of restoration. And truly, from this point on, the rest of the psalm takes us on a beautiful path of restoration. I intend to teach transgressors your ways, so that sinners will turn back to you. David's vision has really been restored. He is now so confident in God's forgiveness, in God's restoration, that he longs for others to join him on the path of restoration. When sin is truly confessed and the dark cloud lifts, we take our eyes off ourselves and see those around us. David began by looking inward at himself, but now he looks outwards to others and upwards in praise to God. Lord, open my lips so that my mouth will report praise concerning you. And this outward and upward vision continues right through to the very end of the psalm. In verses 18 and 19, he explains what he'll be teaching others about God's ways. For you do not delight in sacrifice, or else I would give it. You are not pleased with burnt offerings. The sacrifices acceptable to God are broken spirits, a broken and crushed heart. God, you do not despise. David came with a broken spirit, a broken and crushed heart, and he experienced restoration. But David is a king, And a king has a people, a community that he represents, that he leads. And his restoration then becomes a promise of their restoration. David's broken and crushed heart becomes a model for the people's broken and crushed heart, that they too might experience the same restoration. And with this, David finds a new prayer. Restore us. Do good to Zion in accord with what pleases you. Build the walls of Jerusalem. Then you will delight in right sacrifices, in burnt offerings and whole offerings. Then people will offer up bulls on your altar. And this completes the journey of restoration in Psalm 51. Cleanse me, restore us. David began in verses 3 to 11, overwhelmed by his sin and crying out, cleanse me, wash me, for I have sinned. But he did not stay there. By verse 11, his confession was complete. God was right, he was wrong. No more hiding. This complete confession then made a way for a new prayer, with restored vision for the good path with God. Restore me, create a clean heart for me, God. With this, he no longer focused inward on himself, but now upwards to God and outwards to others. I intend to teach transgressors your ways. My restoration opens a path for the restoration of my community. Yes, don't just restore me, restore us, as we come with the sacrifice of broken spirits and broken hearts. Then and only then will you delight in right sacrifices.